The Battle of Hogwarts ended on the 2nd of May, 1998, and within a few years, the witches and wizards who fought it started having children. Those children grew up in a world their parents bled for, inheriting famous names, complicated legacies, and in some cases, abilities that made the older generation a little nervous. This covers every confirmed child of the post-war generation, who they were, what they inherited, and what makes some of them quietly terrifying. But there's one child on this list who arrived in the world on the same night the war took everything from him. And what he became, despite that, is the most interesting thing to come out of the entire conflict. The Potter children. Let's start with the obvious, the 3 children of Harry and Ginny Potter. James Sirius Potter is the eldest, and he's precisely the kind of person his 2 namesakes would have been thrilled to produce. He got Harry's appetite for danger and Ginny's absolute refusal to back down. And the combination has made him the most reliably entertaining problem in whatever room he's standing in. Not malicious, genuinely cheerful about it. The sort of student who accumulates detentions the way other people collect chocolate frog cards. Casually, consistently, and without much concern. Then, Albus Severus Potter. And here's where the Potter family did something nobody saw coming. Albus is quiet, where James is loud. Cautious, where James is reckless, and was sorted into Slytherin, which sent a visible ripple through every family portrait in Gryffindor Tower. The post-war wizarding world had quietly assumed that being Harry Potter's son meant something specific. Albus dismantled that assumption on his first evening at Hogwarts. He carries the weight of 2 legendary names, Albus Dumbledore, Severus Snape, and seems to find that weight genuinely exhausting, which is understandable. Most people can't hold one impossible legacy. He got 2 right out of the womb. And finally, Lily Luna Potter, youngest of the 3, named after Harry's mother and the most singular witch of Albus's generation. Where James charges into situations and Albus thinks his way around them, Lily reads them. The room, the dynamic, the angle nobody else noticed. Gifted with her mother's sheer nerve, and something harder to name, she's the one the family will eventually realize they should have been watching most closely all along. 3 Potter children, 3 completely different orientations toward the world their father saved. The next family on this list managed to do something even more remarkable. They changed what their surname actually stands for. Scorpius Malfoy. The Malfoy name, for the better part of a century, operated as a reliable indicator of wealth, influence, and a willingness to make life unpleasant for people the family deemed beneath them. Then, Voldemort fell, and the ideology the Malfoys had built themselves around collapsed with him. Draco Malfoy married Astoria Greengrass, a witch from old wizarding stock who had, quietly and at some personal cost, already walked away from pure-blood supremacist thinking. That decision shaped everything that came next. Their son, Scorpius, grew up in a Malfoy household with none of Malfoy values, which is either a redemption arc or an identity crisis, depending on how you look at it. Scorpius is, by all accounts, a perfectly decent person. Studious, thoughtful, sorted into Slytherin on his own merits rather than his name. Completely uninterested in blood status. This is the part that confused Hogwarts most. Not that a Malfoy was in Slytherin, but that the Malfoy in Slytherin kept being pleasant to everyone and not plotting anything. The wizarding world, for years, didn't know what to do with him. Rumors followed him through the corridors. Most of them were wrong. What actually defined Scorpius was an unlikely friendship with Albus Potter, the 2 of them finding each other precisely because neither fitted the shape their family name suggested they should. The son of the man who stood at Voldemort's right hand, and the son of the man who destroyed him. Sitting at the same table in Slytherin, studying for the same exams, dealing with the same suffocating weight of expectation. Drop in the comments. Did Scorpius deserve more grace from the wizarding public than he got? Or did the Malfoy record earn that suspicion? I want to know where you stand on this. The Malfoy name was rebuilt from the inside out. But what happens when the name you're carrying belongs to someone who died? The next family answered that question in the most Weasley way possible. Fred and Roxanne Weasley. George Weasley lost his twin brother in the Battle of Hogwarts. Fred Weasley died fighting, and George spent the years after carrying that absence. He kept the joke shop. He kept laughing. the humor didn't disappear, it deepened, became something with more weight behind it, which, if anything, made it more effective. He married Angelina Johnson, who had known him since Hogwarts, understood exactly what she was getting into, and chose it anyway. They had 2 children. Their son is named Fred. Fred Weasley II is not a replacement. That framing misunderstands the situation entirely. He's a continuation. The same restless energy, the same instinct for when a room needs loosening up, the same gift for making something genuinely funny rather than just loud. He's good at it. Not because he was trained to be, or because of pressure, but because it's simply how he's built. The people who loved the original Fred see something familiar in him and smile. That's not a burden. It's a privilege. Roxanne, the younger, came out different. Where Fred moves through Hogwarts at volume, Roxanne is quiet. She notices things. She's been described as sharper than expected, more strategic than she lets on, and, perhaps most tellingly, almost never in trouble despite being George Weasley's daughter. That last detail is genuinely impressive. It suggests a level of operational discipline that Fred Sr. would have envied. One Weasley household producing a comedian and a tactician. Meanwhile, the most academically decorated household and the whole extended family was generating its own surprises. Rose and Hugo Granger-Weasley. The Granger-Weasley children carry the longest surname in the post-war generation and, in Rose's case, seemed determined to justify every syllable. Rose inherited her mother's raw intellectual ability and her father's competitive streak, a combination that produces someone who is exceptional almost in spite of herself. She doesn't work hard to prove a point. She works hard because losing feels genuinely offensive to her. Professors find her equal parts impressive and slightly wearing. She's the student who asks the follow-up question before they've finished answering the first one. Her brother Hugo is a different story. Not less intelligent, different in what he wants to do with it. Where Rose meets the Granger-Weasley legacy with open arms and sprints toward it, Hugo seems to have quietly decided that he'd prefer to exist at a lower altitude. He's more reserved, less visibly driven, content to let his sister absorb the ambient expectations while he figures out what he actually cares about. Given who his parents are, that kind of self-possession at a young age is arguably the more impressive trait. The Granger-Weasley children are defined by what they've chosen to take on. The next family produced children defined by where they came from, which is a complicated place to begin. The Weasley-Delacour children. Bill Weasley was a Gringotts curse breaker who once survived a werewolf attack and didn't let it particularly slow him down. Fleur Delacour competed in the Triwizard Tournament as a 17-year-old and married the man who impressed her most, which says more about her standards than anything else. Their children inherited both lines. Victoire is the eldest, born on the 2nd of May, the anniversary of the Battle of Hogwarts, which means her parents named her Victory, which means no one in this family does anything quietly. She carries some of her mother's Vila heritage, has her father's composure, and occupies space in a way that draws attention without asking for it. She is, by all accounts, formidably put together. Dominique is the middle child and operates on entirely different principles. More impulsive, more willing to try things before understanding them, more comfortable with the possibility that it might go wrong and that that's fine. The chaos is more cheerful than dangerous. Probably. Louis is the youngest and most underestimated. He watches. He says less than the others. He's been raised around exceptional people his entire life and has had plenty of time to figure out what that means. Which, in the long run, tends to produce someone more interesting than the ones who announced themselves early. 3 children from one house, all excellent in different registers. Percy Weasley's branch of the family went a different direction entirely, which is to say, organized. Molly and Lucy Weasley. Percy Weasley's journey from insufferable rule follower to war hero is one of the post-war generation's more quietly satisfying stories. He ended up with 2 daughters who seem to have inherited his better qualities and left the rest. Molly II, named after Percy's mother, which is either a tribute or Percy's way of making absolutely sure his daughter is taken seriously at every family gathering for the rest of her life, is capable, composed, and built for responsibility. The sort of person who takes on authority not because she wants status, but because she's genuinely better at it than most people and finds disorganization physically uncomfortable. She'll be prefect. She'll probably be head girl. She'll act like it's no big deal, which will be annoying for everyone who tried for years and didn't get it. Lucy reads differently. More curious, more inclined to test edges, more interested in the gap between what the rule says and what it actually means. She operates just inside acceptable, close enough that no one can formally object, far enough that the professors know something happened. Percy, if he's honest, probably recognizes the thinking. He just expressed it differently. Percy's daughters demonstrate that the Weasley line doesn't always produce fireworks. Sometimes it produces people who are quietly very hard to stop. The next family raised children who were born wondering about things most wizards don't even think to question. Lorcan and Lysander Scamander. Luna Lovegood married Rolf Scamander, grandson of Newt, a magi zoologist who spent his career studying creatures the wizarding world preferred to pretend didn't exist. The match made complete sense. Luna has always been most at home with things other people don't take seriously. Together, they raised twins, Lorcan and Lysander. The Scamander household is built on curiosity rather than expectation. No pressure to be the brightest, or the most powerful, or to carry a particular legacy forward. Just pay attention, stay interested, and take the world seriously on its own terms, rather than the terms everyone else agrees on. For children raised in that environment, Hogwarts is not a challenge. It's a new source of questions. The twins are observant in the way their mother always was, noticing what's there rather than what they've been told to look for. They're not disruptive. Exactly. They just pull lessons in unexpected directions, occasionally fixate on something the professors didn't intend to discuss, and wander away from conversations because something more interesting happened nearby. Not rude, just genuinely more interested in the world than in the performance of engaging with it. In a generation defined by legacy and expectation, Lorcan and Lysander are the exception. Children who arrived without a weight to carry and built themselves around wonder instead. Every child on this list inherited something from the war. A name, a reputation, a loss, a debt. One child inherited all of it at once, and he never got to say thank you to the people who made it possible. Teddy Lupin. Remus Lupin and Nymphadora Tonks were killed in the Battle of Hogwarts. Their son was born the same month. He grew up in a world they died making safe, without ever meeting the people who made it. That fact alone puts Teddy Lupin in a category no one else on this list shares. He was raised by his maternal grandmother, Andromeda Tonks, a woman who had already lost her husband and daughter to the war, and who chose to raise Teddy with the kind of steadiness that loss either produces or destroys. His godfather was Harry Potter, who knew what it was to grow up without parents and made sure Teddy never felt it the same way he had. What Teddy became, given all of this, is almost unexpectedly straightforward. Warm, open, loved by the people around him, willing to show it. He's not brooding. He's not performing. He's just genuinely fine, in the way that requires actual work and isn't obvious from the outside. He inherited his mother's ability as a metamorph magus, which means he can alter his appearance at will. His hair is the most visible indicator. It shifts with his mood, which gives him the unfortunate distinction of being the only student at Hogwarts whose emotional state is immediately legible from 20 meters away. A useful quality if you want to know how a transfiguration exam went. Less useful if you're trying to pretend everything is fine. Here's what's easy to miss about Teddy. His parents weren't famous the way Harry was famous, or revered the way Dumbledore was revered. Remus Lupin spent most of his adult life being quietly marginalized by a wizarding world that never fully accepted werewolves. Nymphadora Tonks was a young Auror who fought because it was right, not because anyone was watching. They didn't get statues. They got a son who grew up knowing exactly what they were, and turned out the way they would have hoped. He later began a relationship with Victoire Weasley, which means the post-war generation eventually joined its most tragic loss to its most deliberate symbol of hope. The wizarding world didn't plan that. It just happened, the way most meaningful things do. Teddy Lupin is what the Battle of Hogwarts was for. Not the victory. Him. The children of the post-war generation grew up knowing their parents' story. But what if that story had gone completely differently, and Harry had grown up knowing somebody else's? What if every other character raised Harry Potter takes that question further than you'd expect? And it's the place to go next.